They didn't wait even a moment for the lawyer to begin speaking. "She will get nothing. Dad hated her," my sister Karen declared as soon as I entered the room. There was no friendly greeting or eye contact, just that harsh statement, loud, enough to ensure everyone heard it, as if she wished it to resonate. The impact of her words hit me like a powerful blow, landing heavily in my chest. I clenched my grip on my son Eli's hand, feeling his small, warm fingers tremble as they wrapped around mine. I managed a weak smile for him, shaky and thin, but he understood. He always could. Though I hadn't even sat down yet, it was evident I was not wanted. I was not part of the family. To them, I was just an unwanted guest they wanted to dismiss. At the head of the table, Karen sat confidently in her gray pantsuit, her dark hair pulled tightly into a bun that she always wore when she aimed for dominance. The bright red lipstick she wore was classic Karen, a war paint ready for a conflict. I had not anticipated. Then, the voice I dreaded most filled the room. My Uncle Rick, my father's older sibling, chuckled dryly. Leaning back in his chair with his fingers intertwined behind his head, a smug grin spread across his face like, "Grease. Even her kid knows she's worthless," Rick sneered, nodding towards Eli as if he were not even a person. Eli cast his gaze downward, and I felt my heart shatter a bit more. A few heads around the room nodded in agreement. My cousins, old neighbors and family friends I hadn't seen for ages, people who had chosen their sides long ago, and I clearly wasn't on the right one. I gulped hard. My throat felt rough like sandpaper. The air was thick with a stale mix of dust, leather chairs, and the overpowering scent of Karen's perfume. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, loud, overwhelming, and incredibly embarrassing. Motioned for Eli to sit in the furthest chair at the end of the long mahogany table, distancing ourselves from the group. The chair creaked as I settled into it. Eli quickly climbed up beside me, his legs swinging above the floor while his hands rested nervously in his lap, as if he wished to vanish. Karen slowly redirected her gaze toward me, and when our eyes locked, she smiled. But there was no warmth behind that smile, just a poisoned pity. "You realize this is pointless, don't you?" my sister Karen remarked, her tone even and icy. "Dad changed the will and you've been completely excluded. He said you're dead to him." I didn't reply. I was unable to. My tongue felt heavy, restricted. Instead, I simply nodded a bit, pretending to comprehend. But deep down, I wondered why I had even bothered to come. Perhaps there would be something. Maybe a letter, a phrase, a clue that he still thought of me. Anything that could clarify things. But instead, I found myself back in the very place I vowed never to return to. Among people who had clearly moved on, having buried me long before laying him to rest. Just as I prepared to rise and exit before they began to pick apart the estate. Like hungry vultures, the door creaked open. Mr. Connor, the lawyer representing my father, walked in, holding a hefty folder tightly under his arm. He appeared unchanged, sharply dressed, weary eyes, and a stoic expression that revealed nothing. An uneasy silence filled the room. Everyone straightened in their seats. This was the moment. I steeled myself for embarrassment. I had come here, with no expectations and thought I would leave in the same way. Or so I believed. However, unknown to everyone present, not Karen, not Rick, nor even myself, was that my son, Eli, had brought an unexpected surprise. With a single phrase, he was about to disrupt their assumptions. "You forgot the video," he announced. It had been 8 long years since I had last entered a space like this with my family. 8 years since I had packed up the life they insisted I didn't deserve, took my then 2-year-old Eli, and walked away without a glance back. Not out of desire, but necessity. Every interaction with my father, Charles, ended in either silence or raised voices. Family gatherings felt like traversing a field of broken glass while pretending to smile for photographs. Yet here I was again, in a room still haunted by the scent of cigars and lingering bitterness. How ironic. I had no idea I was even included in the will reading. The envelope had arrived 3 days after the funeral. No accompanying note, just a formal note from Connor with the date, time, and address. For a brief moment, I questioned if it was intended for someone else. perhaps Ken, or if it was just a cruel prank in the end. But Eli wanted to attend. He looked up at me with his innocent, expressive eyes, his voice calm but assured. "We should go, Mom," he said. "Maybe you need to hear something." I often wonder how a 10-year-old can possess such depth of understanding, yet he does. Sometimes, I feel he perceives the world differently, wiser than many adults. So we decided to go. I wore a simple black dress, one I hadn't touched since my mother's funeral, while he chose a small button-up shirt that he selected himself. That morning, I braided his hair with shaking fingers and he told me I looked pretty. He had no idea I had hardly slept, and that the thought of facing those who had treated me like a phantom for almost 10 years filled me with dread. I was aware of how they viewed me. To them, I was merely Karen, the ideal daughter. She was always there, helping out and caring for Dad, ensuring everyone noticed her efforts. She repeated the tale so often that it became accepted truth. Julia left the family. Julia couldn't cope with the real world. Julia escaped. No one bothered to ask why I departed. It seemed they either didn't know or didn't want to know. They didn't understand that Dad had cut off contact after I refused to remain in a marriage that was destroying me. When I arrived at his doorstep with Eli and a suitcase, he merely closed the door on me in silence. The very person who should have shielded me from the harshness of life had transformed into yet another barrier I needed to push through. Uncle Rick didn't make things any easier. He parroted Dad's resentful words. "Family doesn't abandon each other. Blood means loyalty. Don't return with complaints." Karen absorbed all of this and turned it into a script she could use against me. So, I gave up trying. I created a peaceful life for Eli and me. We didn't own much, but we savored love, laughter, and tranquility. Yet, a tiny, delicate hope lingered within me, that perhaps, in the end, Dad had realized something, regretted events, or left something undone. Maybe this explained why I opened the envelope and why I decided to show up. However, as I sat in that room, surrounded by cold stares and smug expressions, I felt foolish for having held on to hope. Eli had been silent since we took our seats. He sat upright, his hands resting in his lap, scanning the room as if he were analyzing every face. His composure made me slightly uneasy, as if he were anticipating something. Then Mr. Connors cleared his throat and began to open the folder. I reclined in my chair and whispered to myself to just make it through. Don't allow them to see you fall apart. But Eli, he was carrying something deeper than sorrow, and before it ended, he would show that he was the only one truly paying attention to my father. Mr. Connors cleared his throat again, the typical gesture lawyers make to gain the room's focus without overtly asking for it. He adjusted his glasses, opened the folder, and started to read the will as if it were an ordinary Tuesday. I barely caught the first few sentences. Standard legal jargon, definitions of the estate, official declarations. My mind was racing, not with the words he spoke, but with the foreboding sense of what was to come. I was convinced he wouldn't mention my name. Still, each time he paused to turn a page, I held my breath, hoping that maybe the next phrase would surprise me, that it might be different. But, alas, it was all the same familiar names. I bequeath my primary residence, along with all its contents, to my daughter Karen. While Karen's expression remained unchanged, I sensed her contentment wafting through the air like a pleasant scent. A quick glance at her husband Neil revealed a self-satisfied nod, as if they were already envisioning renovations. To my brother Rick, I leave the lakeside property and all the remaining shares in the family business. Rick leaned back in his chair, arms crossed and chin raised like a monarch surveying his new domain. I noticed him reposition the cigar between his teeth, gently biting down as if he had already claimed victory. Additionally, my nephew Paul will receive the vintage car collection. Paul, the cousin who had once locked me out of my own room at 9 just to see me cry. Yes, that Paul. I bit my cheek to suppress any emotion. Tears welled up, sharp and hot behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Still no mention of me, not even as a side note. Then came the line I feared the most. As already stated, my daughter Julia will not receive any part of this estate. There it was, straightforward and definitive, akin to the sound of a door slamming shut. It felt as if I had been struck in the chest. Eli's fingers intertwined with mine beneath the table, surprising me as I realized my hands were tightly clenched in my lap. His touch grounded me, pulling me back from the abyss. My heart raced, and my skin felt heated. Following this, whispers filled the room, low yet pointed. Karen let out a quiet scoff. "I told you," she whispered to Neil. Uncle Rick shook his head, as if this outcome was entirely expected. "It takes a particular kind of person to turn her back on her own father," he announced, louder than necessary. The others, the cousins and the so-called friends, didn't speak much, but their silence was deafening. I focused on the intricate wood grain of the table, the twisted lines mesmerizing, more bearable than their faces. Inside my head, a voice echoed emptily. Why did I come here? Why did I think he would remember me? Just then, Eli shifted. He released my hand and sat up straighter, a change I felt before I saw it. His voice sliced through the tension like a delicate blade, soft yet firm. "You forgot about the video he made." The atmosphere froze. Karen blinked in surprise. Rick turned to face him, while Mr. Connor hesitated, his pen suspended over the page. I glanced at Eli, a wave of confusion washing over me. "What video?" I softly inquired, my voice hardly a murmur. Eli, however, didn't meet my gaze. He was focused straight ahead, composed and sure. He retrieved a slightly wrinkled white envelope from his backpack, sealed tightly. My name was written on the front, accompanied by Dad's scrawled note. "For the lawyer only. If it gets ugly." I was still trying to comprehend it, but Eli seemed to understand. And at that moment, a shift in the room's atmosphere became palpable for the first time that day. With disbelief, I stared at the envelope Eli held, as if it could explode. He appeared so unperturbed, contrasting sharply with the danger it represented. I couldn't take my eyes off the familiar, bold handwriting on the front. My father's. "For the lawyer only. If it gets ugly." Well, things had certainly taken a turn for the worse. Struggling to speak, I asked, "Eli, where did you find that?" He raised his gaze to me, a soft yet steady look in his eyes. "Grandpa gave it to me. Some time ago. He told me to keep it safe." My heart skipped a beat. He gave it to you?" He nodded, replying, "On the day we visited him, just us. You were at work." I blinked, trying to recall the details. I remembered the day clearly. Eli had asked to go with a neighbor to drop something off at Grandpa's house. It was the first time I allowed him to go without me, completely unaware they even spoke. Just then, Mr. Connor leaned forward, asking softly, "May I?" Eli promptly passed the envelope. The room tensed, everyone leaning in. Karen squinted, confused, while Rick straightened in his chair, no longer relaxed. For the moment, silence enveloped us all. As Connor opened the envelope, it made a soft, tearing sound. Inside lay a small, ordinary black USB drive. Yet my heart raced as if a bomb had been set off. Connor's expression grew serious as he pulled out a note, another piece of my father's writing. Scanning the note, I noticed his usual calm demeanor falter slightly for the first time since entering the room. He paused, nodding slowly, as if something unspoken had been validated. "Everyone." Connor spoke softly, his tone subdued. "Before this will was finalized, Charles Thomas recorded a video message. It is meant to be played only if there are disputes." He glanced briefly at Karen and then Rick, who both shifted uneasily in their seats. Karen let out a scoff. "This is absurd. He never mentioned a video." Uncle Rick leaned in closer, his voice firm. "We don't even know what's on that video. It could be fabricated." Connor raised his hand to interject. "It has a timestamp to verify it. I recognize his handwriting and signature, so according to his wishes, I'm legally required to play it." He connected a USB drive to a sleek black laptop positioned on the desk beside him. The screen lit up, showing a logo that faded into a dark frame with one word, "Play." A heavy silence filled the air as everyone sat still. I could sense my heart racing at my fingertips. My grip tightened on the chair arms, hoping they would anchor me in this reality instead of drifting away. My breaths were shallow and unsteady. Why would Dad leave behind a video? What was Eli's intention? What could he possibly want to tell us now, after everything that happened? Eli appeared calm, staring at the screen as if he already anticipated the content. Karen looked ashen, her mouth drawn tight. Rick had ceased his cigar chewing. A surge of emotions hit me. I felt the urge to run, to cry, to scream. But most importantly, my desire to understand prevailed. Connor pressed the space bar. The screen went black for a moment before flickering back to life, revealing my father. He looked older and thinner, seated at his desk in the navy sweater. I gifted him for his last birthday, one I never knew he had worn. His hands rested neatly together, his face not cold but weary. He gazed directly into the camera and began to speak. I held my breath, both when the screen illuminated and when his face appeared, and especially when I heard his first words. "Hi, Julia." He seemed older than I remembered. His skin had lost its fullness, and his once strong posture had softened. Yet, there was my father, Charles Thomas, in front of that worn oak desk with the antique globe behind him, just like during my childhood. But in this moment, his expression was not stern or detached. It was human. "If you see this," he continued, "then I'm no longer here. I assume the reading didn't go as planned." He held his hands together, his fingers twitching, a nervous habit I also shared. "I didn't expect things to be calm between you and the family. I know their feelings toward you. In fact, I remember what I said about you." He lowered his gaze and swallowed hard. I was mistaken. My breath caught. My fingers pressed into the armrest of my chair. Eli looked at me, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. I trusted what Karen and Rick told me. "I thought you left because you didn't care." I failed to ask questions. I never listened to you, not even once. You made efforts, and I closed the door on you and Eli. I heard Karen shift uncomfortably in her seat, but I couldn't bring myself to look at her. Dad's voice quivered slightly. "I used to think strength was synonymous with pride. I believed walking away was an act of betrayal, yet true strength lies in showing up. It means protecting your child. You did that. You accomplished what I couldn't." His eyes shimmered. My own vision started to blur. I met Eli one day, when he came to visit, just the two of us. That boy, he didn't say much, but when I asked him about you, he said, "My mom is the safest place in the world." I flew my hand to my mouth. "I lost you, Julia. I understand that now. I lost my daughter because I was too stubborn to love you in the way you needed. But I won't let my last decision be to push you away again." He cleared his throat and looked directly at the camera, unwavering. "So, I've changed my will." There was a collective gasp around the room. Maybe someone's chair creaked. Possibly Rick's. Karen muttered something under her breath, but it was too quiet to hear. My focus was solely on my father's voice. "I've left the house to you and Eli. The savings, the retirement fund, all yours. And there's a college. Trust for Eli. I know this won't repair the damage I've caused, but I want you to have the peace I failed to provide you during my life." He paused, leaning a bit closer to the camera. "If they are upset, let them be. You deserve this. You've survived everything, and you never stopped being a mother. That's more than I ever achieved." A lump rose in my throat, so large that breathing became difficult. "I'm proud of you. I love you, Julia. Always have. I just didn't know how to express it." Just before the video faded to black, he quietly added, "Take care of my grandson. Thank him for me." The screen went dark. No music, no chairs creaked around me, and I heard someone sniffle. Yet, I remained still. With my hand covering my mouth, tears streamed down my face, and it felt as if a heavy burden I hadn't realized I was carrying had been lifted. After years filled with chaos, blame, isolation, and silence, he finally heard me. He truly heard me. And in that hushed moment that followed, no one could take that truth from me. When the screen turned black, silence enveloped the room. Not a word came from Karen, Rick, or the family, friends, and cousins who had previously smiled while overlooking my struggles. Even Mr. Connor remained motionless, his hand suspended above the mouse, as if pausing the video had halted time itself. In a sense, perhaps it really had. I lost track of how long I remained there, my hand still over my mouth. As my cheeks felt damp, I hadn't realized tears were falling until Eli's hand found mine once more. He wasn't crying. Instead, he looked at me with a small, understanding smile, as if he had been waiting for this moment when the truth would finally emerge. Leaning down, I kissed the top of his head. An ache filled my heart that was too profound for words, a mix of love, relief, and sorrow, all tangled together. Then, across the room, Karen stood up suddenly, causing her chair to screech against the floor. With trembling hands, she grabbed her bag and exited silently. Her husband followed, his face flushed, mumbling something to himself. Rick lingered longer, his jaw tight and gaze blank. When he finally got up, he looked at Connor as if he were ready to argue, but deep down he understood there was nothing to dispute. My father had voiced his truth, and it was now undeniable. One by one, the others began to leave. Some couldn't meet my gaze. A few offered faint nods that I couldn't quite decipher as either pity or respect. Soon, only the three of us remained. Connor gently shut the folder and cleared his throat. "There will be some paperwork," he said, his voice softer than before. "But everything is in order." I nodded, unsure of what to say. What could I say? He gave a sincere smile, and then left us alone in the room. The ensuing silence felt different from the type I was accustomed to. This quiet was serene and complete, like everything had finally found its rightful place. I glanced at Eli, still grasping my hand, looking at me as though I was invincible. And perhaps, in his eyes, I truly was. But he was the one who rescued me, carrying that envelope as if it were merely a piece of paper, not the truth that would change everything. We lingered there longer than expected. The reason was unclear to me. Perhaps I just craved a moment to relax. Maybe I wanted to be in the one space where, for the first time in years, I truly felt I fit in. Dad's words constantly echoed in my thoughts. "I'm proud of you." 3. Simple words I never thought I would hear. They were what I needed more than I had ever admitted. I reflected on all the burdens I had borne. Years of being silent, of feeling blamed, of being forgotten. But now, I realized I wasn't invisible anymore. I was acknowledged, listened to, and remembered. Turning my gaze towards Eli again, I softly said, "Thank you." He leaned closer, asking, "For what?" I replied, "For showing more courage than I have," and added, "For clinging to something that truly mattered." He smiled back and said, "I just wanted you to be able to hear him." I did hear him, not only in the video, but also in the calmness that enveloped the room after everyone else had departed. Here's the essence of truth. It may not arrive at the perfect moment, but when it does, it transforms everything. So, I didn't exit that room feeling broken. Instead, I walked out hand in hand with my son, carrying my father's echoing words in my heart. I emerged complete. That silence, at last, held significance. If this tale resonated with you, and you've ever felt overlooked, misunderstood, or dismissed, remember this: you are not invisible. Sometimes the truth needs time, but it will eventually shine through. If you experienced any emotions while watching, please like this video and share it with someone who could benefit from it. Stories like these reach those who need them most when you help spread the word. And if you desire more authentic, heartfelt stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to share. Until next time, be strong, be kind, and always remember, your voice is important. Transition, just a deep, profound silence.